Hi. In this segment, I interview Michael Bornn of the U.S. Virgin Islands Montessori School and the Peter Gruber International Academy. Michael is a Renaissance man. He is fascinating, and I'm sure you will really enjoy this interview. He's worked in finance. He's also worked in politics. And in his latest career, he is a very successful Montessori school head. I think you will find his words very, very interesting. He experienced one of the worst natural disasters you can imagine. His school was hit by two hurricanes in a 1 week period in 2017. A very, very distressing experience for both the school and also the overall, St. Thomas, the island that he lives on. It was devastating. And I think you will find that his story and how his school emerged stronger than ever will be very inspiring to many of you and hopefully very relevant. Now, I did learn a lot during this interview, and I definitely can say that there are things that he has to share that are very relevant. He himself will point out areas that surprised me, in which that I didn't expect to learn that his experience was very different from the COVID-19 disaster that we're experiencing right now. There are things to learn, and there are things that are not so relevant, but overall, I think that you will learn quite a bit. I'm absolutely sure that you will enjoy this interview. He's a fascinating person. Hi, I'm sitting here with Michael Bornn, who's the head of school of VI Montessori, which is on St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands. Michael has a very interesting story, a difficult experience that he and his school marvelously overcame, that I think will have relevance to our entire community. And I've asked him to spare a little bit of time on this glorious Sunday to share some of this experience with us. So, Michael, I'd like you to start by just telling us a little bit about your school and your community, and where you were before this crisis hit.
Sure, Morgan. Thank you. It's my privilege to interact with you. Here in the Virgin Islands, education has been a horrific problem. Quality education has been a horrific problem for many years. It's a long saga, but basically in 1967, there was a court ruling that drastically changed the quality education on the Virgin Islands. And from 67 until practically now, the public school systems have been horrific. I was blessed with the opportunity in 2007, to become a part of VI Montessori. I was a parent, and they recruited me to become chairman of the board. At that time, the school was just from 2 years of age to the 6th grade. And I became chairman of the board in '07. We expanded the school to be from 15 months to the 12th grade, and we added the International Baccalaureate curriculum to the Montessori curriculum, which has turned out to be a terrific match. And we completely turned around the school from being a quiet little Montessori school to most people considered the day before the hurricane to be the leader in education in the Virgin Islands, where we really pushed the envelope. The IB education allowed our students to go practically any school they wanted to, not only just in the US, but as the International Baccalaureate program implies, in the world. We had kids accepted around the world. And we not only therefore provided a quality education for the students, the 300 students that were now enrolled in our school, we also created competition for other schools. So Mark, not only did our school and our students get a better education, we lit the fire on the other schools to maximize and multiply the effect. And so I'm glad to say we had a serious impact on our community.
Positive influence.
Yeah, I mean, when I got there, we started with 150 kids. Now, as I said, the day before the hurricane, we were north of 300. And
well, Michael, can you tell me
to grow?
Can you tell me a little bit about the community of your school? So take me to 2018. 2017, you had 320 or so students at your school. It's without a doubt a renowned school, one of the most influential schools in our entire country. Certainly was the best respected school in the Virgin Islands. Went all the way from toddlers? Let's start with toddlers.
Toddlers, 15 months of age, toddlers, yeah.
Right, all the way from toddlers through high school.
Mhm.
So a strong established school. This is 2017. What was your school community like? Who were
Well,
the
that's the joy of our community, as is the Virgin Islands. It looks like the UN. We have black kids, white kids, Indian kids, Chinese kids, you name it. And, when you take it, well, actually, feel free to go to our website, vimsia.org, and take a look at our pictures. Our student body is the global community. We have some kids that hitchhike to school. We have other kids that come to school in a Land Rover. We have the economic variance, we have the cultural variance, we have the religious variance. So it's a terrific environment. Diversity is our norm.
And what about economic diversity?
Immense. I mean, 45% of our kids are on financial aid, and yet others, are on full tuition and paying and make donations. That was, just briefly, I'm not an academic. I'm a business person. I went to Culver Military Academy. I went to Georgetown. I did the Chase Financial MBA. I'm a finance person. And so I take care of the business of the school and not the academics of the school. And one of the great successes to this whole thing is that, the day before I got there, the school had basically no income outside of tuition. And today, even today now, as in 2020, easily 20 to 30% of our income is non-tuition. And that allows us to open up the doors to whomever wants to attend. And we have a really simple admissions policy, Mark. We look for students that want to learn. We don't have an examination that says, okay, we only take the brightest kids in the country. We look into their eyes and into their heart and see if kids want to learn. And if they meet that criteria, and when I say kids, it's the family too, because we believe in the three-legged stool, parent, teacher, student. If everybody doesn't want to play together, we don't want to be part of it.
Right.
So once they meet that criteria, because of our financial standing, we don't let finances be the hindrance. If somebody needs 50% financial aid, we provide it. If somebody can afford to pay 100% tuition, they pay 100% tuition. So that we separate, there's a wall between, academic acceptance and financial acceptance. And we try very hard never to let finances be a hindrance to enrollment.
Michael, I want to drill just a little bit on this, and we may have to come back to it later, but you said something that I think is very intriguing, which is that you're looking for the right families, you're basically trying to build the right community.
Correct.
And this is a bit of foreshadowing, if you will, but I think the fact that you built the community in such a strong way plays a bit into your story, don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
So maybe we should return to that. Tell me a little bit about what was happening as the hurricane approached. I mean, in the Virgin Islands, you're used to hurricanes, right? At some point, you knew this was different, though. I mean,
yeah, and that's exactly it. And one of the things when we did a report a couple months after the hurricane, it was, I was trying to articulate to people that crises are going to happen. Don't wait for you to have your personal experience to be prepared for the crisis. Learn from the Michaels of the world. Learn from the other people that had the hurricane and the tsunami and the whatever. Before, don't be so selfish and think you have to first experience the crisis to be prepared for a crisis. So, to that end, in the Caribbean, we look at hurricanes like common things. Just like in California, you expect earthquakes every other day, right? You live with them. And so, we respect the hurricanes, but no one ever really till the last moment expects it. Oh my God, this one's going to hit. And so once the hurricanes, in the hurricane season, which is, August, September is the peak seasons, they start coming off Africa, and you start, preparing, you get your bottled waters and you do these various things, but you're always in the back of your mind, and gosh, some people even in the front of their minds is, relax, don't worry about it. This one's going south, this one's going north. Very people say, oh, this one's coming here. But last, in those 17, not only the one, but two hurricanes, two Category 5, Irma and Maria, hit us within 10 days of each other. No other destination has ever. I mean, people talk about Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico only got hit by Hurricane Maria. We got hit by Irma and Maria within 10 days of each other. And even though you know that the hurricanes are off Africa, 2 weeks before, it's not until that last moment that you realize, oh my God, that this is going to hit us. And then you never expect it to be a Category 5. And so that's how it was with Irma. We did our basic preparations. Did anyone expect a Category 5 to hang over the Virgin Islands for 8 hours? No. And for some reason, I don't know, I have to check the geology on this. I don't know why hurricanes believe they have to hit at night, but they never seem to come in broad daylight so you can see what's happening. And so you wake up the next morning and you go out and you see total decimation. And
So let me stop you right there. So this is the scene, right? Your family's bunkered down. You bunkered down with your family, right? Everyone is in their houses. They weather the storm during the night.
Correct.
What did it feel like during that evening?
In my specific situation, and by the way, Mark, I was also here 25 years ago when Hurricane Hugo hit. And Hurricane Hugo, actually, I thought was a worse hurricane. Mm-hmm. But for Irma, thank God, I live in a 400-year-old sugar mill with 2-foot walls and a pretty good bunker. And specifically to me, inside my house, quite honestly, I didn't feel, as they say, that the train was coming down the rails, which is how we described with Hurricane Hugo in 95, I think that was. But you hear everything outside breaking. You hear trees snapping. You hear the wind howling. You know damage is being destructed. And I say this very much personally, I felt secure within the confines of my residence. But let's put this in real simple terms. I mean, my house is a whole lot more substantial than others. Mm-hmm. And so I was under no falsehood that others were doing well. I mean, I fully understood. And you have, for some reason, the good old-fashioned radio still works in these crises. And so you keep abreast of the damage that's happening. And you heard the catastrophic calls, this is happening, and you knew that night during the midst of this hurricane that we were in for some serious trouble. So the winds topped out about 200 miles an hour.
So how did you feel that morning when you got up? I mean, were you apprehensive? Were you worried about the people you know?
Well, once again, since I'd gone through other hurricanes, you start out, first of all, optimistic. Hey, morning has come. I'm alive. I got 2 hands, 2 arms. My family's alive. Hey, we got this. This is good. And then you start, the first item normally after hurricane, Mark, is a chainsaw. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you pull out your chainsaw and you start trying to get out of wherever you're at. And in my case, trying to go to the school. But you cut out, the first big anxiety is your car drivable? Or did a tree fall on it? Is it crushed? Did it get blown away? That anxiety. Once again, in my personal case, Hail Mary, our 2 cars were intact. And there were trees in our driveway, so I had to cut them down. And then I started, and once again, the first thing, of course, any normal human being is making sure your family is in place. Thank God here we have a generator, we have, water. So, once we did the first, and the first day, quite honestly, well, that's not true. I was going to say the first day is all about the house. No, it's just my personality. As soon as things were maintainable at the house and stable, I ventured towards the school. To get to the school required me stopping the car and cutting down several trees and things of that nature. And then, so then I ventured to the school to see what we had.
What did you find when you got there?
Well, our school is in this little bowl in the Virgin Islands, where once again, as a Montessori school, we started 54 years ago, and it has survived for 54 years without any damage. So, you know, the perception was that we got this covered. This school survived for 54 years. Will there be broken trees and stuff? Sure, but we believe that our school was hurricane proof. Well, as I pulled in, well, first of all, I couldn't pull in to the school because massive trees were blocking the entrance. And so the first thing was to start cutting down trees. And so we could get through into the entrance. And then you started, going across our 10-acre campus and looking at that roof's gone, this door's blown down, da 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 da. And you start inventorying it. And as I said, we suffered about $3 million worth of damage of, buildings that were, horrifically damaged. Others that just took a little hit there or whatever. But we after 54 years, we had our turn. Hurricane Irma smacked us across the face.
Right. $3 million in damage sounds like just a number, but I mean, you lost a number of buildings. They had to be completely rebuilt.
Yeah.
So how many buildings what were the buildings that had to be rebuilt?
Well, we're still in the process, unfortunately, because of the FEMA process of rebuilding. We have subsequently renovated and repaired buildings that will eventually have to be replaced. We're going to have to replace 4 buildings. It was our BEC program, which is our after-school care program, our art facility, our dance facility, and then also our La Casa, our toddler facility. And I say that those are the names to them, but in our school, in our environment, every building is multi-purposed. I mean, the art studio is not just used for art. It's a classroom facility that serves many needs. Same thing with the dance facility. So, 4 buildings were unusable, and that left us with 7 buildings that were usable. And so what we quickly identified was, how to clean up the debris around campus so that you could walk safely, and then started to work our way into classrooms to figure out how to get classes operational, because the goal from the get-go was, how do you get back in school as soon as possible? And we started that process literally that day. And once again, to your point about the community, it wasn't just Michael Bornn out there with a chainsaw. Neighbors came, parents of families came, teachers came. They all came to do whatever they could. And the collective effort, parents had a backhoe, parents had dump trucks, and, everybody came to the effort of raising, of doing the effort. And then that was one of the big saving graces.
When faced with a crisis like this, a lot of people would just, even if they didn't give up, there would be at least a moment where they would want to, where they would be like,
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is such a task. I don't know if I can do this. Did you ever have any moments like that?
Well, not to be sadistic, but it's exactly what it is. Mark, not after Irma, okay? After Irma, I was, if you would, calm, cool, and collected. We got this covered. We knew what we were going to do. The whammy that completely threw us all for a loop, because, okay, once again, my days are off. I can't remember what, but basically, Irma comes, we start cleaning up. 5 days later, people start talking. There's this hurricane out there called Maria. Maria's coming. It's like, you must be joking, right? And so you fast forward. So we're trying to clean up, let's say, for the first 5 days. And then I remember gathering the staff together again. And as the kid here, who's the local kid who has a good hurricane knowledge, I had done the emotional walkthrough with all these people before the hurricane, prepping them as to what a hurricane could do. During the hurricane, I was communicating as best as I could to tell them what to do, what not to do, stay relaxed and calm or whatever. And so I was like their local weather enthusiast and support group. And 5 days after Irma, I gather everybody and say, this is not a joke, but
Here it comes.
Maria's coming. Let's stop cleaning up from Irma and let's start preparing for Maria. And this is one of the things that it's really difficult, and it's very trying for us, in that the emotional health of everybody has to be job number one, because some people in these crises respond with real vigor, and they just go get them. Other people just melt, and you don't know until it happens. Because I got to tell you, I looked at some of my staff who said, God, she's the best leader we have, and she disappeared. I mean, she melted. She couldn't cope with it. And then somebody who's a quaint little teacher who just does her little job stands up like a lion and says, I got this. We're going to take control. So you don't know. And that meeting was very trying, because people like, you must be joking, right, Mr. Bornn? Like, we just got smacked around, and now we have to prepare. And so it was a really tough environment, but we really emphasized to everybody at that point, forget the damage of Irma. We got to start talking about your personal safety, and let's concentrate on that until hopefully Maria will go north. But if not, let's prepare and deal with it from there. So, that was really difficult. And I don't know if you know, but one of the real burdens that still haunts me is we lost a teacher.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Irma. Between Irma and Maria, she disappeared, and we have not found her since. And we've had a national search and everything. And basically, unfortunately, I think we has said that no body's ever been recovered, so we can't say what happened. But that has worn on me forever, because I question myself, Mark, no doubt about it, as to talking about that emotional health. What did I miss that I couldn't identify that she was in trouble and we didn't throw her the lifeline, so to speak? And
yeah, but what could you have done? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, people, I don't know, but boy, it's not a, speaking of crisis management, I don't wish that on anybody to have, that's a game changer.
I mean, that's something I think about with this current crisis we're going through with COVID-19. Right now there's a lot of statistics. We haven't seen a lot of loss of human life. I mean, we read it on the news, but we don't know a lot of people.
Yeah.
But that may change. And
I got to tell you, and when you can put a name and a friendship and a face to that number, I would venture to say it changes it.
Yeah.
I don't wish that on anybody, but I can tell you, once again, going back to the story of, you don't have to go through the same crisis that we did to learn from it. Please learn from others that have gone through it. And I don't wish you that one of the victims of COVID, but that's not funny.
No, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's a crisis is a theory until it becomes personal, right?
Yeah.
Right now, most of us are trapped in our houses, and that's just an inconvenience.
Yeah.
Struggling to breathe on a ventilator,
Yeah.
So, all right. So then Maria hits.
Yeah.
Maria hits, and that was the moment where you were like, I just don't know, right? That you're just, you're like, I don't know what I did to piss off someone up there, but.
Yeah. And then you talk about the ups and downs. So as I said, so after Irma, I was calm, cool, and collected. It was just a matter of, okay, we got a lot of work, but we can handle this. After Maria, you your questions like, come on, what's going on here? This is not for real. And I'm not bright enough to differentiate between the damage caused by Irma and what was caused by Maria. But I can tell you, the day after Irma, it was total devastation. And whether you want to attribute it to Maria or to Irma, knock yourself out. But I can tell you, walking out of the house the day after Maria, there was no such thing as unscathed in the Virgin Islands. I mean, it was either flooded from Maria, landslides, things, blown up. It was total devastation. And to the point then also, relative to the school, I said that we lost these 4 buildings. Once again, my memory and my innate thinking is not so great to try and just decipher to you what actually happened in Irma and what happened in Maria. But after the two of them, it was 4 buildings destroyed, $3 million in damage. And,
Right.
and, and it is after that second hurricane that, yes, I hit bottom. You know, I remember the day after Maria, you know, so after like the second day, and the first day you go out and you do the same inventory and you say, oh my God. And the second day when I got up, I had my low point where I asked myself, my God, have I just wasted 10 years of my life?
Right.
You know, I just was like, you must be joking. You know,
I mean,
we
what
had
a
a
what a
massive amount
sunken
of
feeling.
damage.
I said, what a sunken feeling you must have
Yeah,
had.
it was, that was my bottom. I clearly remember it, thinking there's millions of dollars of damage, because at that point you don't know if it's $1 million or 5 million or whatever. It's just massive destruction. The school you knew 2 weeks ago is gone. 50% of the parents have left because, you know, then the following week, 15,000 people in the Virgin Islands are evacuated out, which part of which was 50% of our population. We have no financial resources to rebuild. Some of our teachers have, you know, just been distraught. At that point, we realized one of our teachers was missing. The world was on top of my shoulders. It was a low point. And thank God, out of that low point came my resolve. And, you know, the resolve to, we will survive. And I, you know, pulled up my pants and said, let's go get them. And proceeded to do what people have come to be acclaimed for, of, you know, rallying the troops, being that emotional stability for the community that needed it. And then the other point, what I really want to emphasize, Mark, is the benefits that we proceeded to reap in the following days after Maria were not because of Maria. And it was because of what we did 5 years preceding. The fact that we had become the educational leaders in the Virgin Islands, and that we had been a community, not just for the 320 kids at our school, but the community leader throughout the Virgin Islands, is why people stood up and said, we will not let VI Montessori School fail. And people came out of all sorts of broken down houses or whatever,
Right.
and made us, you know, invincible.
So, Michael,
And
I really want to
besides,
get into what actually happened specifically right after Maria. But before we do that, I want to know where you drew your strength, or how you found the resolve after that moment of lowness to stand up, as you say, pull up your britches and say, okay, we're going to make this, we're going to fix this. Where did that come from? Do you know?
deep in the soul, you know, just, you know, you know, our school is built on a couple of things which were perfect for these crises: growth mindset, you know, you can always get better, and grit. And if ever the two skills you needed in a hurricane, it was those two. And in fact, the author Carolyn Miller spoke at our graduation last year, and she did because it was kind of the reverse. She said, you know, I write about grit, but very few times do I see it like this. And so she said, I have to come to your school, Michael, because you're the living example of grit. And so she came down last year, and in 2018 was the graduation speaker for us, to a group of people who obviously exemplified grit. You know, that's a great question, Mark. And I don't know, I mean, not to sound obnoxious, but it's kind of like, I don't know, it just came naturally. It came, you know, in fact, Carolyn pressed me when she was here and said, Michael, you need to unpack what you did so that other people can follow and then learn. And she challenged me, and I'm not sure I've even figured it out yet, but I mean, you know, I do clearly remember that rock bottom moment. No one slapped me across the face and got me out of that rock bottom hole, but somehow I found my faculties and said, you know what, we can do this. We can do this. And, you know, clearly people like Patricia Gruber, who's the namesake of the It's actually the Virgin Islands Montessori School and Peter Gruber International Academy. Who's been a mantra for me as a mentor, and so much made it easier because she believed in me, she supported me, and with that catalyst, you know, and it's kind of like my guilt to her, not guilt, but my commitment to her. And actually, thanks for fleshing this out, Mark, because it was my commitment to her to honor her husband, Peter, that this school have longevity. And you know, you just hit the nail on the head, or helped me hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it was, is I had a commitment to Patricia Gruber to make sure that VI Montessori School and Peter Gruber International Academy would be a long-standing school. And so I said, you know what? Let's get to work.
You know, when I've talked to veterans who've gone through traumatic experiences, they've said a few things that are not too dissimilar from what you're saying. And there's two things in particular that have struck with me. One is the whole, you don't know how you're going to respond in a crisis until you hit a crisis. You don't know how anyone around you, is going to behave until it happens. Mm-hmm. And some people find strength in some others. And the other thing I've heard from veterans that I think is very interesting is they'll say, you'll say, well, what made you not run away? Right? What made you charge into that? And their bullets flying. Why did you do that? And they're like, I didn't do it for me. I did it. And I didn't do it for my country. I did it for my friends, my squad mates, right? They did it because there's some personal connection. And in a way, what you went through was no less traumatic, I think. It's like, there are all these people whose livelihoods depend on you. There's families, there's children, there's the devastation, there's a missing teacher. There's all this trauma going on. And it sounds like you're saying, hey, the thing that I drew strength from was this personal commitment, or at least that's one of the things, maybe not the only thing. Mm-hmm. Would you say that's accurate?
That is indeed. And as I said, I thank you for revisiting this with me and allowing me to get there, because exactly it was something I just did, but now I have a better sense as to why. And the other thing you buy into very quickly is, even though you see the physical destruction, you realize the priority is not the physical, the priority is a human. Mm-hmm. And so, in the phases after, what became more important was not that we pick up the bush or the tree or the building, but that we make sure that you had water, you had food, you had emotional stability, all those things.
Taking care of your community, not just your school, but the whole.
Right. And that will probably also be one of the things that people will say that what differentiated us is that, Mr. Bornn used to talk about family before the hurricane, but you know what? After the hurricane, he was serious about it. It wasn't a mantra. This school really took care of its family, and so that was one of our keys. So
you bought a lot of loyalty just by being good, just by being, true to your community.
Yeah, and that's what I emphasize to people. And it wasn't that I was seeking loyalty, obviously. I was just seeking to do the right things. But as I emphasized for the 20th time, the success after the hurricane was based on what we'd done before the hurricane. And that's why I keep trying to tell people, don't wait for COVID number 48. Right. Don't, whatever, put these things in place, now. I was making some notes of the qualities that, families have come to rely on us for, and why they like us. And it includes more things like trust, leadership, confidence, safety, dependability. Mm-hmm. Even though the island was destroyed, 1 week after Maria, their kids were back in school. We were dependable. We were there. It was a safe environment. Their house may have been destroyed, but they knew at least their kid could come to the school and have a safe environment for 8 hours in a time when the island was destroyed. They saw our leadership. They trusted us. They knew that, if Vimsia said, let's go left, we're going to follow. We have confidence in them. We trust them. And those are the things that, we put in place long before the day after the hurricane. We just practiced it after the hurricane. We didn't, that was only a poster, guys. It was only a marketing ploy. No, we lived up to it. And, and right now in the midst of this COVID, that's what we're trying to do again, is live up to those mantras.
That's excellent. One of the things I've been saying to people is that all of the community building that we've done over the previous years has been banked, right?
Yeah.
And when people are coming to me and saying, I don't know if I can ask for tuition right now, I don't know if I can ask my parents to contribute to this, to the school. And I'm like, well, honestly, this is the time when hopefully you can draw on your banked community,
Yeah.
because it,
Yeah.
they need you to still be here after this crisis.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your families, I mean, they were all suffering, but they knew that, right? They had their own traumas, presumably a lot of trauma,
Yeah.
but they came together anyway to help your school after the hurricane.
Yeah. And, and because we'd done a good job before the hurricane, our mantra reached beyond the 320 parents. And as I said, that at that bottom moment where I saw the dollar signs as to what it would cost to continue, I was at a loss. And today and the day before COVID, uh, our school was in a better position than it was the day before the hurricane, because third parties, people that had no kids in our school, but just knew about our school and believed in our school, stepped up in a very big manner and did not allow us to fail, and in fact allowed us to excel. And not that I'm beating up on my good federal friends FEMA, but FEMA eventually I guess will come through, but 2.5 years later we're still waiting on FEMA. So it wasn't FEMA that saved our school. It was our private supporters, our private donors that stepped up in an awful big manner, not only to meet the immediate needs, but to create an endowment for us, so that now that we're facing COVID, I am not in the same position I was after Maria, thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? I know exactly what I'm going to do now, because we performed as we were supposed to after Irma and Maria. We learned from that mistake, which I don't want people to learn from mistakes personally. I wanted to learn from reading about it and watching videos. And we were therefore in a position for COVID to better handle COVID. And I'm not looking for COVID number 48, but that's what you need to do, is prepare for the future. And I cannot thank our donors enough for what they did, because they've now endowed our schools. So back to that original point I mentioned about why did I do it? Because I had a commitment to make VI Montessori School and Peter Gruber International Academy a long-term venture. And that's what we're in the path of doing.
It's fantastic. It really brings home to me how much COVID is a hurricane, right? I mean, in the
Oh
sense
yeah.
that a hurricane hit everyone. It's not just your school, right? It wasn't
Right.
just a crisis for your school. It was a crisis for your entire community. But the thing that I'm hearing from a lot of people I've been speaking with is that they're quite anxious about the idea of approaching parents or other potential donors when everyone is suffering right now. But it sounds like you were able to, I mean, you went to people whose houses were probably half wrecked or more, and they believed enough in what you were doing that they were able to come through.
Well, actually, no. In other words, we took the attitude of, we're going to get third parties to help us.
Okay.
And we did the reverse, Mark, of helping those that needed more help than us. We purchased, or we got donated like an army of generators, standby generators, which we provided to staff and families that needed electricity. We provided food to them. And it's because, as I said, people, and this is a big thing, difference between hurricanes and COVID. In hurricanes, it was just our little island being affected, so to speak, and then Puerto Rico, whatever. But in COVID, everyone in the world is being affected. And the real disconnect with COVID is, the same people that have the resources are invested in the stock market, their wealth is down 30% now. So they may be safe and not infected with COVID, but they're being affected because the whole global economy is going into a recession. They're all going to be affected by it. And that's what makes this one actually more difficult, because in our hurricanes, I could rely on people who were not physically in St. Thomas. who had an association that admired and believed in our school and our vision. And so they could step up and help. And they did. And they did in a great way. And we in turn had the vision to realize that our school was more than just real estate. It was the family. And we took care of the family. And our donors wanted us to take care of the family. They didn't say, okay, Michael, here's $5, go buy a piece of lumber to replace the one that got damaged. No, they said, Michael, we believe in your leadership. Spend this money as you feel best to make sure that the Vimsia community survives and thrives. And that required first taking care of our staff and our families. And then we got to buying lumber to fix the problem.
So
today we're great.
If you lost half of your families overnight because of the evacuations,
right.
How did you pay bills that first month?
Donations.
Yeah. And those were from people off the island? Is that right?
Pretty much so. Outside, unaffected from the hurricane by definition. I mean, some people might have been here, and some people were here, but for whatever reason, they were insulated. They survived, and that got us by. We did not expect anybody in our tuition base to pay tuition. Now, some did, and we viewed it as just a windfall. But given the state of crisis we're at, we were not going to go out and say, Mr. Sheldon, you signed a contract and you owe me $5. We weren't going there. Now, if you were able to pay $5 and you had the moral obligation, we accepted your $5. But we certainly didn't go send any bill collectors out to say, give me money. Because legally, our contracts state that you owe us money whether you come to school for 1 day or 185 days. And so legally, I had a mantra that I could have gone and sued 300 families, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I sued 300 families, the school would have been out of business, because that would certainly not have been the mantra that we developed over the last 5 years, or the 5 years previous to the hurricane. So we said, let's figure out how else we can raise money so that we can continue and be the lifeline. And this is critical. I mean, we were the lifeline for families because, back up a bit just from the school. Parents at that time viewed our opening as critical because they couldn't have their kids at their broken down house. They needed their kids to go somewhere else so they could concentrate on rebuilding their house, to clean up the flooded waters, the debris. And so we were their lifeline for them to be able to survive. So they could drop their kids off at school and go back and clean up their houses. And we facilitated that. And as I said, we went even so far as to provide them food, to provide them water, to provide them generators so that they could stand on their own feet.
You were supporting the community.
It's contagious. It's contagious because by doing that and providing leadership, people see it, they get inspired, they get empowered, and they get a sense of confidence that, you know what, we can survive this. We can do it. And that's what we excelled at.
It sounds like you really did. During this period, did you have to ask for any sacrifices from people like your staff, or did you have to change anything around the school that made it harder on parents? I mean, what did you have to do that was not hard?
Yeah, and right, and there are no easy decisions as this goes through. First of all, as I said, some people just melt down in these things, and so a number of our faculty members left island. I can't recall offhand, but payroll went from this to this because people said, Mr. Bornn, I love you and I appreciate what you're doing, but I'm not cut out for this. And so going back to the difference of COVID and hurricanes, you could get on a plane and disappear from the hurricanes. You can't get on a plane and disappear from COVID,
That was scary.
So a big chunk of people, both academically, from the student side left, and that meant, I guess, being sadistic, having now 150 kids to care for instead of 300 made it easier. So on the one hand, the fact that 50% of our population left was indirectly a blessing. But some of our staff left. And then the others were, as I said, in different shapes of ability to handle. And so, counseling was provided. But in general, we didn't, no, we didn't. If you stayed and were willing to, go forward, we paid you. So we didn't say, okay, everybody, you getting a 50% pay cut. No, we paid everybody if they were still contributing to the cause. If you, decided it wasn't for you, we said fine, but that was the end of your contract.
So did you have significant reserves that allowed you to pay full salaries?
No, not at all. And that's the difference today with COVID vis-a-vis then. And that's why I hit bottom that day after Maria, because it was like, now what am I going to do? And it meant, pull up my britches and find money. Hey, why was I hired to run the school? Because I'm supposed to be a money man. Well, guess what? I was now thrown dead smack in the middle of the highway with the chore of, Michael, you've got to save the school. And it's going to require money. What are you going to do? And that's my job. And thank God I have a great, and this is not just Michael. This is the family that we created. And our board got together, our families got together, and we raised money. Whether it be, one guy gave me $400, other people gave much more than that. And,
I know a lot of people who are going to watch this video are going to immediately think to themselves, well, how the heck does he do all that money raising? I know that's a big topic and we can't really get into it too much here, but I do want to just let people know that the foundation, the Montessori Foundation, is planning on having a series of videos about exactly this topic. And I'm hoping that, Michael, you'll be part of that conversation.
But let me give you a little heads up. It's real simple. Two real friends, and it's funny because I've, once again, before the hurricane, I've been to a number of conferences, and there's always the topic of fundraising. And I always poke my head in to see what these great editorials are supposed to be like. And I always walk out to scratching my head because I'm not a professional fundraiser. What I am is a passionate fundraiser. And if you don't have passion for what you're doing, I venture to say you're not a very good fundraiser. You'll never be a very good fundraiser. And honesty. The people that donate money are typically very astute, have been around the block many a times, and they can smell a rat a mile away. But if you're passionate and honest, they will smell that 10 miles away. And that's what they want to buy into. They want to buy in somebody who really believes what they're doing and is honest about what they're doing. And going back to that list of things that, they trust you, they like your leadership, you're dependable, they have confidence in you. And that's the key to fundraising. It's not like picking up, course number 101 and checking off these punch lists. It's about the heart.
Right.
And the only thing that I don't know, going back to Carolyn Miller saying about how do you unpack it, the only thing I still don't know how to teach people is how to make the ask and not be intimidated by the word no. But that's the only, and some people, for whatever reason, just can't say, excuse me, sir, can you give me $1 for the popsicle? They just can't, it can't come out of their mouth. And that's the biggest hurdle I tell people in fundraising. If you can get to that one, they're not going to shoot you. They're not going to bite your head off. They're just going to say, sorry, can't help you now. Or just like, no.
Well, it's like asking someone out, right? It's like asking someone out. You just got to be prepared for the no,
Yeah. And the one yes is going to mitigate all those thousands of no's. And so just ask. But if you are not passionate about what you're doing, and God forbid if you're not honest, get out of this business. Don't do it.
So Michael, we're definitely running out of time. I thought to close, maybe you could just give us a brief rundown of how long it took your school to sort of approach normal after these crises, or how close did you come, and how did that process look?
Yeah. Well, it's funny that COVID should come now, because one of the things we were saying is that this would be the last year to get back to normal, because as I said, even though our enrollment's back to the numbers it was before, it's not the same disbursement. So our upperclassmen, 10, 11, 12, after the hurricane, left in droves because it made sense. They had to go to the States to get into colleges. So you understood it. So our enrollment in those upper grades fell through the floor. And this year would have been the last year of that small class. And then we were looking forward to next year being a normal year, where we were back both in gross numbers of 300 plus and the right disbursement amongst classes. Well, COVID has changed that. So it's still in process. Other than COVID coming along, Mark, we were back at normal. But now we're have to retrench. But it was, but here's another tidbit to it. Believe it or not, and once again, because our hurricanes were specific to us and not the globe, by January, our kids were doing better academically. The hurricanes hit in September. So by January, our kids, January 2018, our kids were doing academically better than they were doing before the hurricane.
Wow.
Why? They had no activities at home.
No distractions.
They couldn't get under joysticks. They couldn't watch this and that. Because it took us 6 months to get power back at homes here in the Virgin. It wasn't 6 days, 6 months. And so kids were forced. Well, not even forced. They all of a sudden became totally in love with school because school was normal and the house wasn't. And so these kids were like, they're phenomenal. And for instance, our graduating class in 18 was one of our best IB performing classes with the DP exams ever, because the kids were focused and they had that grit. So, we came back fairly quickly, actually, other than the fact that the numbers, but, operations of the school came back pretty quickly.
Michael, that is truly an inspiring story. Thank you so much for sharing it.
My privilege, and I hope others don't have to relive more crises, but you need to prepare now for the future crises.
Very good words to live by.
And one last word, and it actually goes back to the core of it. I do not view a crisis as a crisis. I view it as a massive opportunity. Never miss the opportunity presented by crisis is what I tell people. Don't look at it as, as a negative. Try and figure out what are the positives out of a crisis, and that will get you through. Because God knows there are an awful lot of positives to come out of a crisis if you take advantage of it and and be aggressive with it. So look at these crises going forward as an opportunity, find the silver lining, and go at it.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you, buddy. Take care.